We will call the, yeah, geez, Troy. We'll call the park board meeting to order. We'll start with a roll call.
Miller,
Here.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Scheip,
Here.
Jaeger,
Yes.
Rushmeyer.
Yes. And Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's scoot in a little bit. Next up, we have the approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve, Jaeger.
Second, Miller.
Any discussion on the agenda? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. Next, we have the consent calendar. Notice to the public, all matters listed are considered routine by the board and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the board votes on the motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I will second the motion to approve the consent calendar.
Any discussion on the consent calendar? Riveting topic. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The consent calendar is approved. Item 6A is new business. We're going to approve the updated park board meeting schedule.
Sir, Mr. Chair, so in the packet is the updated schedule. We had one revision to the, would be the June special meeting for capital planning. So we have it listed as June 6th at 3 p.m. We also wanted to just quick lay out the, call it the final capital planning special meeting in July 11th. Hopefully we can have most of our capital stuff wrapped up before our final budgeting stuff in April or August. And then just lining up the rest of the meetings as we had agreed on previously.
Make a motion to approve that? Oh. Yes? Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That calendar is approved. Next up, we have event application for Arts in the Park.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So in front of you, you have the updated application for that event, the one that was kind of behind the reservation application. That was an outdated version. So this one is the corrected one. July 2nd, Sunday, July 2nd is when the event will take place from 10 to 4. Artist fair, car show, live music, food trucks. So kind of the typical players from previous years. With that, we're recommending approval without any additional conditions attached.
Any questions for Jesse about the application?
Yes, I have one. So in the past, we've talked about parking at events. So do we need to talk about that for this event at all, with cars parking like on the grass and all that kind of stuff?
It does specify in the reservation application that Gregory Park has on-street parking only, and that parking is not allowed in the park. And I believe the mayor has indicated that this event moving forward, the vendors have generally understood that they will park and move their vehicle off the site, and that there was one vendor last year that kind of refused, and they have not been invited back. So generally, everybody understands that that is the rule, that they will not be parking in the park.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of parking within the park, the only thing that we ask is that we be allowed to have the classic cars parked on that south side. That does create a bit of an issue on our side. We get a little bit of blowback from some of our artists. You know, why can the cars be there? And we try to explain there's a big difference between the two. There's a nice spot there that they can actually pull right up on the curb because there's a curb cut there, as well as it's a low impact area in terms of what the vehicles are there for. We did have one artist last year that did refuse to remove their vehicle, and our response to them was, you won't be invited back. So they're all informed each year that come in, drop your stuff off, pull back out. Hopefully they disperse a little bit so there's some parking along the sides. But then, you know, they're allowed to pull back in. We just definitely do not, and part of it is from our own standpoint as well. You know, it gets very crowded in there, and we just want to make sure that it's a very clean look and that all the artists are being treated fairly. Last year, we did put up some handicap signs. It's not really a legal handicap sign, but people did seem to follow that. Next to the sidewalks, we just put in some paper signs of our own in an effort to try and keep some of those spaces open. That did actually work, so we'll try to do that again. I know it's not a legal, it didn't say I'll take that back. It didn't say handicap. It was a blue sign with a vague, maybe this could be handicap type symbol on it, so.
Troy?
Two questions. So does that still allow the vendors to pull in to the park, unload, and then park on the street?
Yeah, we would be
that
hoping
what you're
that,
doing?
yeah, we would be hoping that
Yeah.
that is the case.
Okay.
Yep.
And to me, I think that's more than fair. I also think that in reality, the cars are in a way art. So I think that's, should be valid that they're able to do that. The only question I have is, and I must, maybe I've been really busy with some other stuff. So as far as the alcohol permit,
We are not interested in alcohol at this event.
okay. Okay, I thought I seen that. they were wanting to be-
In last year's event application, we did have that as a piece when the city was, that was before we even knew that it wasn't allowed. We've since looked at that, and it's not something we're interested in.
Okay.
I'd like to make, I'll make a motion to approve the event application for Arts in the Park.
I would second Rushmeyer.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That permit is approved. And next up, another event application, the Crow Wing County DFL. Jesse.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So Crow Wing County DFL would like to hold an event Saturday, August 19th at our new park, Lyman P. Way Park. They want to make use of the amphitheater facility from about noon until 10 p.m. at closing. They want to host a band variety show at the amphitheater. They're expecting about 200 attendees. In the application and the reservation, they are not anticipating additional bathrooms, and they just say it's possible that there's additional garbage cans that they would look into. And then they also indicate that they'd like to have a beer keg vendor. So staff has a few different recommendations of conditions of approval on this. One, that based on the amount of people they are expecting, we are recommending to the organizer that they do have additional restrooms and garbage cans for that event. That's an awful lot for what the facilities currently have. As well as the keg beer vendor, we want to put a condition on there that the city council approves the ordinance allowing sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages in the park, and also adherence to those requirements should that ordinance be passed. And then again, if the ordinance is enacted, approval of the vendor's conditional approval by the council with an application for a temporary liquor license should the beer be sold during the event. Sorry, there's a lot in there.
So you're saying it's a complex situation, Jesse. All right, any questions for Jesse about the application?
I'll make a motion to approve the DFL's application with the staff recommended conditions.
I'll second Yeager.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That application is approved. Next up, the 2023 tree planting quote.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So the park board approved the tree plantings that James and I had kind of presented on earlier this year, and we went out and got 2 quotes. Well, we solicited to several different vendors. We got 2 responses. Landsberg's quote was $69,884. Doucette's was $48,640. We had $50,000 available in the budget between last year's rollover budget and then this year's $25,000. Understanding that the price includes 3 trees that are intended to be planted on Harrison School Elementary School's Boulevard as part of their conditional use permit. For economy of scale, we wanted to include it with the contract. So pulling the numbers out for those 3 specific trees, the impact on the parks budget is about $45,865 if the Doucette's quote is approved. That leaves $4,135 in the budget for the 2 years. Remembering there's some discussion at the Memorial Park planning session that there was some desire to get some more trees next to softball field 2 on the west and north of the field. So staff has 2 recommendations: one, to approve the quote from Doucette's, but also to request authorization to work with them to expend the remaining $4,000 and change of funds to put those additional trees along those areas.
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, so I think we can break this probably into 2 chunks. I guess any questions for Jesse on what he said? Kevin?
I do. Thank you. Mr. Dean, please, I just got 3 quick questions. I'll rip through them. It's my understanding that the Harrison, where the trees are going in Harrison, there was undergrounds there. Do we know if those undergrounds have been moved that will allow them to actually put in these trees?
Yeah, we'll be able to make sure that those trees get planted in that boulevard.
Fantastic. This is a second question. Is this a pretty big gap between high bidder and low bidder? And my curiosity is that if we have any version of a scope difference here that we may not have just asked the right question, that would be are the size of the plants the same? That type of thing. Does this include planting, and do the vendors include any version of a guarantee? I see that there's sizes on here, but is there any type of a guarantee between the 2 vendors that may be a little bit different? And that's
So
all.
the scope of the proposal was the same that was sent to both. So they both had the same. My inclination, this is without talking with Landsberg, is that there's concern about the 1-year warranty, and they're being very cautious with that with their bid. But I know Doucette's has worked with us in the past, and we've typically gotten a pretty good price from them, even with the 1-year warranty. So I believe the bids are appropriate.
Yeah, I was just going, what I was asking is, I know, speaking from experience, many times, even when you create the scope, they turn in a bid and say, well, you got to read what we put in there, and that supersedes the scope. So that was my only question, but it looks like we have that sorted out, so that's all.
Troy?
Oh, I would just make a motion to approve with the addition of the trees in the softball park as Jesse had mentioned.
Yeah, I'll second that motion. Miller?
Excellent. Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approve the trees. Next up is the Lyman P. White Park project update, which is Jesse and, yeah.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So Paul Sandy's going to kind of report on the update and progress of the park, and we'll have some photos to show on the screen too, and then we'll also have a couple little pieces later on. So
Perfect.
All right. Thanks, Jesse and members of the board. Good to be in front of you guys again after a long winter. Our update is in the packet for the last kind of month and a half, 2 months that they've been working out there pretty steadily. They've been working all winter. Granted, it's been, pretty touch and go throughout the winter months, but a lot of progress has been done in the last 2 months. Kind of running through work completed. Kind of before the winter freeze, they did complete most of the flat work and overall site grading, and then they did stabilize that over the winter so that when spring runoff came, soil stayed in place and we didn't run into a bunch of erosion issues out on site. The landscaped and mulched areas throughout the park have been planted with native bushes, shrubs, mulched. Edging has been put in place per the plans. So basically all the landscaping, trees, shrubs, all those items are complete out on the site. As far as the buildings are concerned, amphitheater, throughout the winter and spring months, they've been working on the structure itself and finishing off the roof, and the lighting and the electrical and the stone, I'm looking for the word, the stone on the columns there. So they've been working on all that throughout the winter. They finished those pretty early in the spring. We did have a punch list, a couple items that they had to touch up on both of the amphitheater and the learning center, but those items are being addressed, I think actually currently as we speak. With the restroom facility, they've been working on the outer shell for most of the winter, and then once the spring came around, they've been working on the interior, that being the sprinkler system, controls, all the plumbing, the electrical, the fixtures, the toilets, the sinks, and all of that kind of stuff. As far as the site furniture, that has all been placed. That includes the benches, garbage cans, the dog stations, the bike fix stations. All of that is in place and bolted down in the park at their planned locations. With site lighting, all of the site lighting is in place. The roadway lighting is, the poles are up. They were planning on putting the heads up this week, so you'll see the heads on those roadway lighting poles this week. All the irrigation was completed on Monday and Tuesday last week before the sod went in. We haven't paid out fully on that because we still needed to do the official startup with the park staff and training on the irrigation system itself. River steps and canoe kayak launch. Much of that work was completed in 2022. However, they did finish up a little bit of concrete flat work here this year. You can see today they're actually working on putting in the railing in the center. You can see the hole in the concrete right there. So the railings are going up on both the amphitheater, the river steps, in those two locations. So those railings will be in by the end of the week. Site flat, or the play container, I don't know, we have a picture of that too somewhere here. That looks really cool. We've had some comments about that. It's that wooden structure with the, you can kind of see it in the background there. Yeah, right there. So that is the finished product. Turned out really, really nice. Everything's really solid. You'll be able to have kids hanging from those things and doing what they do in there, and it'll serve its purpose. We were a little worried about it right at first with some of the taller ones being able to be maybe pushed over, but they're in the ground pretty solid, and I don't think there's going to be any problems with people picking those out and throwing them in the river or anything. So, site concrete flat work. There's a couple repairs that they had to do to some concrete slabs, just normal heaving in a couple locations. Those got repaired. They finished the canoe kayak launch. The bottom slab had to get finished. And the amphitheater platforms on the steps got completed here this spring. The hill overlook, that was all basically done last year. Same with the river overlook, that was all basically done last year. The amphitheater seating, those areas were generally complete. They're actually out there staining today, staining the block faces. The contractor began last week and finished the sodding in the entire park. So last week was probably the biggest differentiator in how the park actually looked from a, when you drove by standpoint. Everything turned green in about 2 days, which was pretty incredible to see. We're still waiting on the seeded areas. With how dry it's been, we're gonna kind of pry the contractor to make sure that they're watering those areas that are non-irrigated, that they need to get that grass growing yet this spring so that we can close out the project quickly without having to wait for establishment of that. The roadway and most of the all the roadway work was finished in 2022. We actually just completed all that with the sign installation with the handicap stalls and things. Some of the things that are left to complete, and we've gotten a commitment not only from the contractor, but we've been talking to them on a weekly basis about, you know, where they think they're going to be at. All these items should be complete before the grand opening. The sodding, obviously, this memo was written before the sodding was complete, but that is all sodded now, and the exposed soil areas are all seeded and blanketed. The irrigation startup, it's been started up. We just need to get park staff out there to, with the contractor, to train them in on that system, different zones and everything. The drinking fountain, last I heard about that, that was that change order that was for the exterior drinking fountain. That was on order, and they thought it would be delivered this week for installation next week. So the hope is that that's on the exterior of the bathroom building next week. The restrooms, they've been working in there intermittently here and there. Most everything is done in there. Just a couple of touch-up items. They were putting sheetrock on the ceiling last week. They were finishing the utility room and things, putting the water heater in, doing all that stuff. So most of that will be wrapped up here probably by the end of the week or early next week. The electrical, I talked about the lights on the roadway lighting. Those should be done by the end of the week. They have a little bit of electrical work yet to finish on the outlets on the amphitheater and learning center that they need to do. And there's a little bit of touch-up paint up on the fascia of both the amphitheater and learning center that has to happen. They'll continue staining and finishing the amphitheater tiered seating. He's moving pretty quickly through that. And then on Thursday this week, we'll be walking through with Jesse and James with the city one more time to do a final punch list, which is basically, we did a preliminary one, documented all these items. Contractors checked most of that off. We'll go through and make sure everything's cleaned up nicely and looking really good for the grand opening. Any questions about the park project?
No questions.
I can go through the pictures again if you guys didn't have an opportunity to look at them or you were scanning through them as you went.
I think we're good.
Cool. The river restoration project that we're working on, we've had a kickoff meeting with city staff. We haven't been able to start on that one yet because the river's been so high, we haven't been able to survey anything. I did get word today from the staff that'll be working on that the river's dropped about 4 feet since we did the kickoff meeting. The hope is in the next 2 weeks that the river drops another 2 feet where we're able to get out far enough on that bench down below to survey everything at once. So the hope is that we're out there in the next 1 to 2 weeks gathering our topo survey along that stretch of the river. And that's, and again, that schedule, we're hoping to be in construction here by this fall. That would be, obviously the LCCMR funds are due to be used by June 30th of 2024. So the hope is to get a lot of that done this fall, finish up next spring, and then have that little bit of a warranty period before the LCCMR funds are due to be spent. We provided a cost update for you guys. This is based on as-bid costs. The project is tracking pretty well as far as where our contract cost is with the contractor and the change orders that have been approved. I believe we're at 98% right now, and there isn't much left to pay. So should be pretty close to what that original number was, that original contract cost. We obviously pay the as in place quantities on the site, and so that number is bound to vary a little bit up or down dependent on estimated quantities compared to in place quantities. So this is just under the assumption that all the in place quantities are 100% paid. So that's where you're left off. At the end of the day, you go through the Lyman P. White Park budget, what the road cost was, the city road cost, the additional work for the Mississippi Riverbank Restoration Project. At the end of the day, estimating all those costs and working all the way down, looks like you have about $75,000 remaining of that LCCMR budget, and that's a good little contingency to have based on the river restoration project not being designed yet. It's good to have that kind of in your back pocket. Otherwise, I don't think I have anything else. There's a pay app for this month. I think that probably got approved in bills, I'm assuming already, unless. Okay, yep. So yeah, obviously we provided the pay app to Jesse to process through Park Board and City Council. So that is in the package of paper here too today. So you can see percent complete right now is about 97.55%. So we're right at the finish line. Questions, concerns, anything about the park that you guys have seen or wanted to bring up that we can bring up at the walkthrough?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, quickly, just want to say, well, I've been driving by this park here basically every single day. It's getting a ton of use already. It looks fantastic at night, especially from whatever the next road is on the other side. I always forget the name. There you go. Whatever. If you look across at night, it looks fantastic. So appreciate everyone's hard work and everything on that. I've also noticed, and we were talking just a little bit about this before, is that we have potentially not intentionally created a wonderful skate and scooter park over there. And I do love me some skaters and scooters, and I believe fully in having people in our parks. But if you stop by, you will see that we are beginning to take damage already on some of what we've worked on over there. So I'm just going to pitch it to the group as to whether or not we think we should have a discussion as to some signage or just a discussion about how we're going to handle this, especially with our new steel railings going in and all those kinds of things. And I'm just thinking that might be something we want to talk about, maybe some signage. Are we going to control this, not control this? Is it, well, blah, 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 blah. So just throwing that out there for a future meeting, but otherwise, super happy with everything that's gone on, and I appreciate everyone's hard work, subs, vendors, everybody, and this is a busy time of year, and looks like they're getting it done. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
I said one quick question, Paul. The estimate for the restoration, is that likely to shift a lot once you can survey, or?
That was a number I was given by Luke Lundy. He was the guy that came here and proposed. He said it's generally, we've seen it $150 a foot. When we walked through with Jesse, I think Luke's number at 150 is like the full out, you're into the river stream doing habitat restoration and things. A little bit of scope alignment happened when we were walking, and we want to kind of focus more on the bank itself and remove some of the underbrush and shrubs and things. And so I think, or some of the invasive species. And so I could see that cost going down a little bit based on the $150 a foot being like, you're out in the stream planting native plantings and things, which is not necessarily, I think, what you guys are looking for. So that number, 150, is just based on historical project experience. And once we get into design, we'll be in communication with Jesse and likely the park board on where we're kind of seeing estimated costs based on industry trends and also the design that's coming forward. So having that 75,000 as a little contingency in case, maybe you guys want to do a little more if estimated costs are coming in, way under, it's good to have that in your back pocket.
Script a little caviar from the surgeon when they come by.
There you go.
Cool, thanks, Paul.
Thanks.
Yeah, do we want to discuss the skateboards now? I don't think, do we need a motion on this? I don't think so.
Are you looking for a motion, or you can process this pay app internally, correct? You don't need us for that, right? Or do you need us?
I don't think so.
Sorry, that'll go through council.
Yeah, so skateboards.
I'm thinking
stairs.
future item, maybe.
Future, okay.
That's what I was thinking. It's just, I just want to ask the group if we even want to have the conversation. Because if nobody has an appetite to even have the conversation, then we don't need to put it on an agenda item. But I was just going to throw it out. Just wanted people to be aware we're taking damage over there already.
Just if I can, Mr. Chair, one thing. So I was out there the other day, and the contractor's already kicked a couple kids out there just under the excuse that this is an active construction site, and we don't want kids in there marring things up right now because the contractor is still responsible for that damage. So I just told them, hey, this is an active construction site, and please stay out of here for now. So if you guys get questions about that, that was not only us, but the contractor did. We've kicked out 2 groups over there. So they've scuffed up the front stairs of the amphitheater pretty bad already, and the back stairs with the little scooters.
I think we can easily have this conversation. I mean, if they're damaging concrete steps and whatnot already, if we have to put some signs up, and we can talk about it at another meeting and see how things go in a month, but
We have signs in other parks saying no skateboards.
yeah, I mean,
tennis courts.
so if we need to do that, I think we can do that pretty quickly. I would think if we,
Yeah, we're damaging the park before it's even open. I worry once we're having a party to open the park, it's just going to get worse. And I think our budgeting process is teaching us we're having difficulty maintaining what we have. So unduly wearing the brand new thing is probably not in our best interests.
If it's the general consensus of the park board, we can start looking at getting the signs and ordering them. But we can have a future discussion at a meeting. I did inform incoming police chief Davis of the issue, and so that they're aware and can do a little bit of extra enforcement and extra trips that way, and just to make sure that there's not extra damage going on.
if I may, Mr. President.
Yeah, Troy.
I think if we're already seeing it, it's not gonna go away without, so I think that would be prudent to get signs. I mean, unless you guys think differently, but.
I'd like to see the signs and where they're
this
placed
is-
and that
where this
first,
is
but.
going.
Yeah, I think setting the expectation from the opening of the park that the amphitheater is not the best place to be skateboarding or a place to be skateboarding at all.
Yeah,
Would be
it
really
might
good.
be the best place, but if
Looks like a pretty good spot.
you're a skateboarder, it might be the very best place, but, Yeah.
I'm really torn because I do love seeing people in our parks, kids, and I love seeing the use and the activity. It's just the damage that's hard to, that's hard. Yeah.
This is more of a reason why we need a skate park. This could be some help in for the skate park crew to say, let's not do that. But soon, if you help us fundraise, we can have our own park or something like that.
I think the center area would be great for their pop-up skate parks they do.
Yeah, it's an idea.
Cool. All right. Next up, we have the public forum.
So my name is Sarah Steffen, and I am blessed to have two beautiful girls that also happen to have life-threatening food allergies. We currently reside in Baxter and love to play in all of the beautiful parks in both Baxter and Brainerd. With that being said, we are extremely cautious when we are at the parks because of the shared equipment and worry that food has been eaten on the equipment and spread by unclean hands. 1 in 13 children have food allergies, so my children are definitely not the only ones, and an allergic reaction can result from even a trace amount of an allergen. Currently, there is a movement across the nation for food allergy safety and awareness, and signs are being put up all over to remind and educate families of the importance of eating in dedicated spots, as well as washing hands before using shared equipment. The signs themselves run around $28 a piece, but the peace of mind that they provide parents like me is priceless. And I did send an email, and I've been in contact with Carrie, so she has the information on the price of the signs and where to order them. Any questions?
Oh, thank you. Jesse, could Carrie share that information maybe for the next regular meeting?
We can get it over.
Perfect. Thank you.
Carrie's gone, right? Is Carrie gone?
Yeah, she's gone.
Oh, she's there. Oh,
She has resigned.
I thought she was here another week.
No, but I have that
Okay.
information.
Perfect. Excellent. We will close the public forum at 4:32. Board member reports. Start, Jonathan.
Yeah, no, I got to tour the river front parks while cataloging the capital planning. So now that the river's down, it's much nicer. And again, yeah, got to experience Lyman P. White before the sod was put in. So again, it's really shaping up great over there. So it's been it was a really sweet tour. After the water had cleared out a little bit on the roadways to actually be able to take all the trails, go from Rotary all the way down to Lyman P. was really sweet. So I really like kind of how everything's connected, really shaped up great. And again, just the way that Lyman P. White's kind of everything's very different all the way along the riverfront now. And so it looks and really connects really, really, really well. So I encourage anybody who hasn't already, start down at Rotary and swing all the way down through the trail system underneath the bridge. It was great. So
Excellent. Troy.
I don't have anything.
Kevin?
Yeah, same. I just have two things. One positive note, one negative note. Positive note, Lyman P. White, looking awesome. Negative note, I instantly regret taking both Lum Park and Memorial Park to do my category. Next person.
Couple things for me. Thanks to everyone who came out to spring into action, cleaned up 26 bags of brush in Gregory Park, repainted the Little Free Library, and to whoever threw a cantaloupe in the park, I'd just like to know what the deal was. Real weird, just a whole cantaloupe right there. So, something. Second thing, just want to check in, make sure everybody's good with the spreadsheet we sent out, filling it out, making sense. Cool.
No, I will not be taking pictures of every single item in those parks.
Mr. Overachiever down there.
listen,
so.
I had a ton of fun. All right, yeah, just so everybody knows, it's all there.
Gonna
So,
look bad.
Like I said, I had a few dirty looks, but it was especially the dog park. But no, it was a ton of fun.
Kara, any reports?
No, nope. All good over here.
I don't know if you could report or not. Dave, do you have anything?
That is up to you.
Go for it.
This is your meeting. You can have me do whatever you want. Just super fast, I also wanted to say that per what we talked about at the previous meeting, I did contact a few people about potentially getting some kids into Mill Stadium and doing some work. We actually went in there last night and took a peek at it with a member from High Tech and a couple other individuals just to see what is it that we can do on just a local handyman level type of stuff. And I think that we've got some good feedback. I'm going to be speaking in front of the sports boosters on Friday and speaking to them about that and another potential project. And I think we might get a little bit of movement on it. It sounds like the Baseball Association might have a little bit of interest. I make no promises, but so far it seems like it's a good little thing. And I think it's a good first step to showing people, it takes a lot of work to keep this stuff up, but it's also about personal pride as well. So I'm kind of excited. So other than that, that's it.
Thanks, Dave.
Awesome. All right, we have staff reports. You're all alone over there, Jesse.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. It is a lonely meeting, isn't it? So you have the report in the packet, so I just want to highlight a couple things. Obviously, the softball leagues are in swing. The number of teams are listed there. Epoxy flooring is coming on the concession areas, so we're trying to get that wrapped up too. I know Troy's been working with the vendor on that one. And we are still waiting on Holden to install the new breaker box at the concession building for the new the replaced lights over there at the softball. Just on top of that softball, so you'll see in there that signs were placed. So we did put some signage out in the park regarding the current status of the city code, not permitting alcohol within the park during softball games. I'm sure some people have seen the issues from last week. I know the police department was trying to be educational last week and just informing everybody out there that the city council did not approve the ordinance at that time. And so the current version of the city code does prohibit that. And getting a report from incoming Chief Davis that they did some additional education visits last night, and the feeling that I got from him is that it was generally pretty positive that outside of one person that had an open can, the teams generally did not have any beer present. So that was really nice that they were taking to the compliance pretty well, knowing that we are still working on it. The city council does have a special meeting on Wednesday to perform a first reading on a revised version of the ordinance. If everything progresses and approves on the timeline that it's proposed, the final reading would go on the June 5th council meeting and would come into effect no earlier than a week following. So June 12th would be the earliest that revision would go into effect. So we do have a few weeks yet before we could potentially see a change, but that's, again, up to the council and what the review will be. But wanted to give a quick update on where that's at, but we did put some signs out there to just kind of reinforce and continue to educate everybody that, in the meantime, even though we are working on it, this is the current version of the code. Did have the fishing clinic on last Saturday. We'll have that in the next report of how that event went. As a reminder, we do have the grand opening event coming up here on June 3rd, following Memorial Day, and that'll be 11 to 4. Still have a lot of different events going in there, but it's going to be a pretty large event overall. Banners, we're still resolving the banners issue. We had a lot of them that got damaged from last year. Which ones are able to be hung? That's something that we continuously run into. I've gotten feedback from Troy on those banners of varying quality from some of the vendors that as they're giving us those banners, some of them are better quality and some of them are less. So sometimes the grommets pull out. So something from the maintenance side, they would like to see something a little bit more standardized of this is the type of material that we'd want to see for those banners. So that way it's kind of consistent and we don't have the issue of them tearing. But at the same time, all those vendors that do donate those banners, but pay for those banners, understand that if they get damaged, they are their responsibility to replace too. So a lot of different things going on with the banners, but we are working on trying to get them up. And then obviously Carrie resigning has kind of put a little bit of a burden on the entire staff, but a lot of the different departments have really kind of pulled together. I know some of the admins up here have really helped pick up some of her pieces. Our parks intern, well, it's not part of the parks, it's Katie's kind of special event assistant and recreation assistant. She's really picked up a lot of slack. She's been helping with scheduling for our rec activities with softball and baseball and trying to schedule the fields. That's a pretty big burden. So it's been a blessing to have her there helping out with that. So we'll continue to work on the advertisement and getting somebody in that place to help us out. But we're doing what we can with what we have for staff, and everybody's really pulling together. As of the maintenance report, I'm not going to read through everything, but generally the challenges that we've really had is Troy's been really pressed the last handful of weeks with such a late winter. What we ended up having is a lot of the spring tasks kind of meld right into the early summer tasks. So it's a lot of stacking where we're trying to get things up and running, like the fountain and the splash pad, but we're still kind of cleaning stuff up from the late spring. So really trying to get all that done with a limited staff. So it's been a challenge for them, and still trying to tackle a few different things. If you've seen the ADA improvements, have generally been taking off. We got most of the stuff at Gregory completed. I think they look pretty sharp. I was pretty happy to see not more than a week later that somebody in a wheelchair was wheeled up to the tennis courts in Gregory. So that was nice to see that somebody's getting use out of those ADA improvements out there. We got some of the path at Kiwanis down on the riverside completed. And then we still have the park side that has to be completed yet. We had some staff go out there to try and evaluate what we can do for ADA compliance. We're probably not going to be able to get ADA compliant going from the parking lot down to the shelter. There's just too much grade outside of doing about 3 different switchbacks, which likely won't even get use. So that's going to be the challenge there. But we'll be able to make some ADA compliance down to the fishing pier anyway work. Streets has been helping out parks quite a bit out there with kind of cleaning up all the debris piles and starting to shape those areas up. Obviously, they're pretty busy too with their tasks with patching and sweeping, but they will continue to work together on kind of cleaning up those areas, putting some good topsoil back, and we're looking to get some seed and get something established for the summer in those areas. So quite a bit work left to do. We'll obviously be busy for the next handful of months with all that stuff on top of our regular summer work. So with that, I do have one more request. If you can pull that up, Brent, really quick, the PDF. So I took kind of a panoramic picture, and the intention is really to cite the new sign for Lyman P. White Park. Looking at it, I have a recommendation here, and I just want to make sure that I have kind of a consensus of the park board, because we want to get a quote from Knife Lake, who's been doing a lot of the concrete work for us for the pad for the sign. Looking at kind of where the flow is of the park and where everything's sited, what I'm thinking is kind of where the center walkway coming in nearby the restrooms kind of feels like the central location where, let's call it, the main entrance could possibly be. So if you can switch to page 2, I kind of just quick threw a little illustration of what I was kind of thinking with a potential site for that sign. And I just wanted to get kind of some concurrence there. One, because it is kind of the central area. If you're coming either from the north or the south, it's kind of where you get funneled to the middle of the park. But it also puts it in a spot where it's going to be really difficult for maintenance to maintain that little grass strip as it gets really narrow. It's going to be really tough for us to maintain grass there. So this kind of accomplishes a couple different things there too. So I just wanted to see if the park board had any reservations about the location of the sign.
Andrew, may I?
Yeah, Troy.
That sign's crooked, Jesse.
It's hopefully 3-dimensional, right?
I'm kidding. No, I like that, where that's at. If I could, I'd personally, the sign, if we can do that first, but then I have some other comments about something else that you just talked about, but if you want to do the sign thing,
Yeah, Kevin?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to throw this out to the group here. We had some versions early on in some of our sign graphics. So my leaning is when I see this here is I'm thinking the sign much lower, just so you can see through and into this park. My personal opinion would be I like the style and of course our graphic and all that, but and the location I don't think I have a problem with, but I'm thinking as opposed to 5-6 feet tall, I'm thinking much lower, more like 36, 40 inches tall, kind of ground hugging. And we do have some versions that were in some of our design standards, which showed some versions of much lower, not so vertical signs. But that's my only thought here.
So the sign is a 4x8, so it's a pretty sizable sign. So getting it down, to your point, will
That's my
help
leaning.
with
It's
that.
just proportionally, it looks nicer, and then you can look into the park a little nicer. But that's me only from my designer spectrum. That's all. It's a curse, right, Dave?
I definitely like the idea that it's not, 5 feet off the ground and then 4 feet tall. That, like, hey, we've blocked the view of the river with a sign.
Billboard.
Like, yay. So yeah, that seems good to me.
about a foot off the ground, or do you want it pretty even closer than that?
Make it 8 foot off the ground and they can walk under it. Put it over the sidewalk. Yeah.
Generally about a foot?
Um,
Is that about kind of, so there's a gap underneath? Or even put it right down to the surface?
I was thinking, well, I mean, it depends on the material, so we don't have a splashback issue up off of it. So a foot off the ground, but not nearly as tall, more of a horizontal presentation. That's just my opinion.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool.
I believe we have some renderings of Triangle Park sign that kind of looked that way, if I remember right.
In the design standard? Yep.
And Troy, you had non-sign stuff?
Yes. I'm good with the sign either way. But, back to one of this was a question for Mayor Bedot. Any idea of what you think as far as the council and their decision on the ordinance for the Memorial Park?
Yeah, and I actually didn't speak on that because I knew Jesse had that in there. That ordinance, I believe, was probably set to pass. That was the general feeling from the council, was that we had done the work, we had put in the time to try and get that right. One of the council members, Councilman Terry, noticed that the language in there did not disclude the use of alcohol during youth activities. It was prohibited to sell it during youth activities, but under the item that said consumption, it did not list that. And that made everyone take pause. From what I believe, and I can't speak for any council members, they still will have to go through the entire process, which includes the public hearing and whatnot. What I believe is that it will come back with that language included, and that more than likely will be the piece that corrects that, and it will be voted on again. I can't say for sure that that will be the case. Again, that's why we have the public process that we have, and the public is allowed to speak, and council members should make their decisions based off of that conclusion. However, the general consensus, I think, going into that meeting was the work had been done, and everybody was pretty happy with where we were at. It was just a matter of the wording and that putting us potentially in a bad spot, where, now if someone is inebriated at a baseball game, we can fall back on that you're not allowed to have alcohol there. Whereas if we remove that from that youth part, there's that fine line that says, okay, what is and is not excessive? If we're falling just on whether or not someone is intoxicated, what does that mean, right? So I think it was just out of an abundance of caution, which of course puts us in a couple-week period where for the adults, they have to abide by rules that have not been followed for a long time. And sadly, the problem,
It's been talked about.
yeah, and that's
So
the,
that's why we're putting signs up.
and sadly, the problem is, once you have articles in the paper and media out there saying that we're not following our own ordinances, I assure you, people have spoken in directions of why are you not enforcing your own rules. So it's an unfortunate situation that arises, but in all reality, I think it most certainly falls on the protection of children and making sure that we're doing our due diligence, so.
And if I can expand really quick, on Wednesday, the version is the same version that was before the council with two additions. One is the prohibition of consumption of alcohol during organized youth events. And the second provision is the allowance of occupants of the Lum Park campground, irregardless. So the intention is that, like, if there is an organized youth event like the fishing clinic down at the pier, the people of the campground are still, they have that right to be able to consume in the campground as part of their rental. So those are the only two differences in this version versus the one that was presented before, and that's what is up for discussion with the council on Wednesday.
Anything else for Jesse? All right. Do we need to adjourn to the park opening? There's big scissors, I think, so, like, how can you
I'll
not
make
go?
a motion to adjourn to the June
Lebowski scissors?
2nd, June 3rd park opening.
I'll second, Jaeger.
Any discussion? Yeah, no discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. And a 50-minute meeting? Are we sure this is the park board?